Hi, everybody. An early happy Thanksgiving. Mike Shope with Adam Krautwurst, the Deep End Fantasy Football podcast for the high stakes player. It's the deep end of the fantasy world, and this week is the deep end of the regular season. We'll talk some strategy, have Billy Muzio on to chat about successful teams and things we've learned this year, and more. Welcome to our show, and this is the Deep End. Got a little bit of a vibe here. So the movie Best in Show came up on my WGR show today. And one of the people, the characters in this movie, this dog show movie, they go on a local morning talk show. And the host just kind of sitting there. And then the producer counts down 3, 2, 1. And right before the red light goes on, I'm not sure if it's the man or the woman, but somebody goes, "Energy." I feel like, I don't know. Do you need that? Last night was a long night. It's Thanksgiving coming up. Are we dragging or are we ready?
No, I'm ready. I'm ready to move. I mean, last night was a long one. I mean, last night was brutal. Barely slept. And today's just been, feels like a long day. But no, got to get on to week 12. We got a big 3 game slate here on Thursday. And this is it. It's win or go home this week. You got to get into those fantasy playoffs.
It's a tough one. The 3 games with injury concerns and all those questions, waivers first. And it's kind of the one thing we'll also talk about tonight. It's kind of the time of year where some people might lapse, even if it's not on purpose, or if it is. Either way, like your team is out of it or it isn't, but you just forget. I went to a wedding on Saturday night. I think I'm still dragging from that. And I made I'll give myself a little bit of a compliment by saying I made uncharacteristic lineup errors on Sunday. So, we all hear it and maybe acknowledge it. The later the season goes on, the fatigue starts to set in. But Billy Muzio will be on with us shortly, and there's tons of energy there. I don't think we'll have any trouble getting rolling when Billy joins us. That's how I remember him from the Expo in Canton, where he was the life of the party. He is in the Draft Sharks Invitational, but he's kind of down on the list like I am. We've been waiting here every week for you to finally get to the top, and so I'm sure you did. You were a fraction of a point short, I believe, when we last checked last week.
I'm disgusted with myself. I'm disgusted with fantasy football here. So here I am. I've been second all year, second overall all year. Going into this last week, this week, I was down 0.5 to Chad. He lost Derrick Henry 3 weeks ago, but I also lost Kyler Murray 3 weeks ago, who doesn't want to play football either. So, and I faded. I scored like 119, and he led the league 190 something points. Like, are you kidding me? So, he made a big gain on me this week, or big, extension. And then 2 other guys passed me, Elliott, Chris, and Abib, of course, passed me. So they're right there, though. They're within striking distance. Even Chad's still within striking distance. I mean, it's less than 80 points over the course of 6 weeks. So I had Stafford on a bye last week, along with not having Kyler Murray. So I had one quarterback going there. So it was a tough week for me. I had no Cooper Kupp. So we'll see. There's been a movement here in the top 10.
Yes, and I was noticing on a bad team of mine how with quarterbacks and buys and certain injuries, Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco, Colt McCoy, I mean, Simeon, there's a group of quarterbacks that were like actually relevant 5 years ago that have crept into not best ball teams, because most of these guys were not drafted at all in best ball, but became relevant in season long, and even perhaps Adam in FFPC. I mean, in the Draft Sharks Invitational, you're kind of stuck. My quarterbacks on my team are Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson. And so, you get what you get. That's 44th place. But, the quarterback position is a big part of the scrambling. And it has to be especially true going into this final regular season week with no Patrick Mahomes and no Kyler Murray, who's on bye, both.
Yeah, that's gonna be is an interesting week. Even looking over rosters, like you said, the Draft Invitational is super flex, best ball, so there's no pickups, and so Mac Jones was my only quarterback. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at rosters that I have to play against this week, rosters that I have where you got Chiefs in particular, 2 first-round picks won't be available. You got Patrick Mahomes who won't be available. It's going to be an interesting week. I know in my top main event where if I win I get a bye. I'm playing against a team that's without Kelsey and without Mahomes and maybe without AJ Brown. So I'm feeling really good about that matchup. But it's hard. Listen, everyone's. I know this topic. We didn't have this topic for tonight, but we've talked about this. Like Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, like all these studs that got you there. Well, guess what? You're going to make the playoffs, and I'm hoping those teams make the playoffs so that I can face them. Because not that I was fading Christian McCaffrey at the 1 overall, but Jonathan Taylor, it's like, especially in football, guys, where you get no regular season money, you might not get anything, with Jonathan Taylor with a bye week during the playoffs. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how those play out. And I'm sure there'll be some tweets. I'm sure there'll be some tweets out there with some information on how the Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey teams did.
Yeah, Aaron Jones, you might have mentioned him too, but like
Aaron
Green
Jones,
Bay,
yep.
Jalen Hurts coming up, Chubb for Cleveland, a lot of big names. We've known that, and that's something that you've mentioned throughout the season and going back to draft season. Like, watch out for that, and I'll be interested to see how that manifests. Really, a big difference between the top 2 and then 3rd and 4th here in these FFPC tournament leagues, where the top 2 teams are going to go through and in the main event get paid, as you said. So there's a lot to look at there. Well, we are waiting for Billy to join us. One thing,
Billy just got here.
Oh, good.
Should I bring him in, or you want to talk about him a little bit more?
I guess we should bring him in. I mean, it seems rude.
Let's bring him in.
Howdy, boys. Howdy.
I recognize that man and that set.
Yes,
that's right.
No stranger to fantasy football players and to people who watch the podcast like ours. We've seen Billy many times, I'm sure, on the couch as well with Sigmund.
Oh,
so
yes,
were you on with Sig? Wow.
Yeah, Sig came on our show over at the Fantasy Data live stream, and that was a fun one. It was like there was a comment, and it still rings true today. It was like, I wish Sigmund would read me bedtime stories, and it's here's voices
Sigmund
so
Bloom
soothing.
and Morgan Freeman reading bedtime stories.
He was on my show in Buffalo on Friday, and the Bills go to play the Saints for Thanksgiving. He's like, "Are you coming down for Thanksgiving?" I'm like, "No, I don't travel with the Bills." He said, "Well, is anybody from your team doing that?" I said, "Yes, Sal Capaccio will be down there." He's like, "Oh, well, I'll have him over."
There you go.
So he seems like a very welcoming guy, Sigmund.
Yeah, I was one of my favorite interviews I've done. He was just such a warm, welcoming, just very soothing. His energy was just like it was drawn to him just as a person, and his energy. Just it was just very enjoyable of interview. I really enjoyed it. It was probably one of my favorites. Very
good. Well, let's catch up here, Billy. We saw each other in the summer. A lot of drafting has been done. A lot of money has been spent. I know one successful team to this point of yours we'll be talking about. I know Adam wants to break down the board because you and he are each in separate high stakes leagues in first place, drafting from the same 12 spot.
Yes.
And let me ask you this question, because I saw the Guilds, Andrew Geller, commenting on this, I believe, on Twitter. Maybe even today, is like 12 was the place to draft. And I don't know how serious he was, but do you feel that way a little bit, that drafting at the end was advantageous?
Yeah, so I think, like, depending upon the time of year that you drafted, I think that every spot comes and goes with waves as injuries hit or news hits and people move up and down boards. Towards the end of the year, when we had clarity, when we knew who was injured, when we knew Aaron Rodgers was going to play for the Packers, and the boards kind of settled in, the 12 spot became very versatile, right? You could go 0 RB, you could go anchor RB, you could go double RB, however you chose to build it. And you could find yourself building some pretty solid teams all around. I think where you fall into trouble was kind of like rounds 8 through 12, where people just start sucking up value and picking just, player preferences at that point, but you find yourself at the end of the draft board there, and at times leaving yourself with less than stellar players. But I think overall you were able to build some very solid teams from the 12 hole. I have some very solid teams from the 1 hole that are still alive, but I think here we are, 2 years in a row where the second half of the board was very promising and now is showing, favorites in playoff spots, because if you had, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, good luck. At this point, there's probably very few shootout teams available.
Yeah, it's a good point, drafting at different times of the year. Now, this, if I can remember correctly, Billy, this was the weekend before the season started, this 10K?
Yeah, this was, I think, this was the first one. So this was the Thursday, because we had a free look at Mike Evans.
Okay.
And then Saturday, we drafted our second 10K league. And that one we drafted, I think, from the 4 hole or 5 hole, somewhere in like the front half of the board. And the team looks completely different. But
sure,
this one is by far the better of the two.
Yeah, and I remember, Guilds posted that thing on Twitter the other day about the 12 hole, and then I responded with a picture, and we'll go over it because I love the fact that you picked from 12. I'm in a 3K, and we should probably preface you're crushing in this 10K. You have
wait, hold up, sorry. Mike's the only other person I've ever seen drink wine on a podcast. I love you, Mike.
Well,
thank
you. And I have
high class. He's high class, Billy.
No,
cheers, buddy.
Maybe, but cheers. I just while you guys were talking a minute ago, I went to the link to share the link over on Facebook, and it's like whatever. Do you guys know even how that is just a sort of a random shot? It's like a still shot, but it's me like this. So I'm not putting that up. We have to just change it by a second or something, because I don't want anybody to see, like, that's not the signature moment. But anyway,
that's right.
Sorry to interrupt you, Adam. Go ahead. I just saw the wine glass and I got excited.
No, that's good. This is good. So he even drafts while he drinks wine too. You know what I mean? So,
me too. It's perfect. It's the perfect.
There you go.
It's the perfect beverage for drafting podcasting. You don't have to worry about temperature. You don't have to worry about, having to go run to the kitchen to fill up another beverage. You get the bottle next to you. You can just pour as needed, and you just don't worry about temperature. It's room temperature, and it just continues to get better and better and better as the pod goes on.
Great point.
I'm going to have to do it.
You know what you don't have to worry about? Ice cubes.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about whether your ice is melted or anything. Yes.
I'm more of a hard apple cider guy myself, but yeah, we'll move on. So Billy's crushing it in this 10K, first place. I'm also crushing it in my 3K. We both picked from 12, and we both have completely different builds. So that's why I thought it'd be really cool to kind of go over this. So, like you said, and even Guilds on Twitter was like, hey, it was great to pick from the 12th spot, and he kind of gave you an example of what your team kind of looks like. You got the JT and Najee. Now, did you go into the draft thinking, hey, we're going to go running back? Because I remember thinking in my 3K, getting the 12 spot, and I remember going, you know what? I want to. What advantage can I get over the field picking it at 12? Because I'm not going to get CMC. I'm not going to get the top running backs or receivers. What can I do that they can't do? And my thought process going in was, hey, I'm going to take 2 really good running backs because they can't get 2 really good running backs. Well, we'll show my team out here in a minute. Running backs didn't fall to me, but you were able to do that. Was that your plan going in, or were you just going to go with the best player available?
Yes and no. So we're never one to lock ourselves into a strategy. This draft was with my draft partner, David Hubbard. And when we go into drafts together, we are just BPA. We'll have an idea of what we want to do in that given draft. But nonetheless, we'll let the board fall to us, right? We knew that we wanted to have 2 solid running backs, whether that was going to be, somebody in the first round or somebody in the second round, or maybe somebody in the third if they fell. We knew that we were going to take 2 earlier running backs. We wanted JT. We also liked Najee, so both fell to us. Luckily, we were afraid that the 11 hole was going to take one of them, but that was with the news of Aaron Rodgers returning, he was baited in, so it worked out nicely. We actually had Eckler higher on both of our boards. Eckler was my running back 3 going into the year. I talked about it a lot on podcasts and and I just loved Eckler. But this week was when he had tweaked his hamstring prior to week 1.
Yes.
And we said, you know what? Let's go with JT. Let's go with Najee. They're both going to have a lot of workload. We expected Najee to see 90 to 95% of the snap share, like the team had kind of stated. There was just nobody else really to even counter that or to give him any competition against those snaps. And so it was either going to be Eckler, Najee, Eckler, JT, or one of those three or two of those three. So I think either way it played out, it would have been fine. But I mean, I think JT was, of course, the home run hit right now.
Yes, of course. When you have the lead, you're going to see a lot of successful names. And I also see Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel on this team.
Yes.
So that is another daily double right there with those two guys. How did you feel about Samuel versus Ayuk? Like, what was your sort of distribution on those two?
All preseason, I had stated that Deebo Samuel was the pick above Ayuk. I went back and watched. I'm a film guy, and I went back and watched film from 2019 because 2020 was an injury-riddled season. It was kind of a lost season for Deebo, and I wanted to see Deebo in action. And went back and watched tape. So and specifically, what caught my eye was the NFC Championship game against the Packers when he was just running all over him. It was yard after the catch monster like he is this year, and looked at his ADOT and very low ADOT, and said this is that ADOT is not going to be repeatable. So if he's able to see a higher ADOT as well as this yard after the catch, he's in for a big season. When I looked at Ayuk and said, hey, I think the kid's talented, but and a big but. Everybody was injured. Deebo was injured. George Kittle was injured. Every Niner running back was injured. His stats were, propped up by necessity and out of need, not necessarily want. And when you start hearing John Lynch echo how much they love Deebo Samuel in the offseason, for me, just kind of everything aligned. And I was choosing Deebo. Whenever I have anybody that close, because it was close for me, don't get me wrong, but when you have somebody who's in round 5 or somebody who's in round 7/8, for me, I'm going to pick the latter and hope they outperform that ADP.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Now, this is kind of, I may be losing my mind. Were you the one at the expo that was telling me about the Bob Long story about having information on Deebo Samuel, or was that somebody else?
No, not me.
Okay. I think I saw a tweet on it too, but yeah, Bob Long was like telling everyone who would listen about Deebo Samuel in the over at the expo. So
there was a few of us who were very high on him, but it was few and far between in the preseason and even going into week 1. But I was beating the drum, and I had several debate tweets with Josh Larkey over at Player Profiler in regards to it. And I love the talent, and I'm so happy it hit.
Now, so you were looking at sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry, just to add, it's working unconventionally somewhat too. I mean, this game against Jacksonville, he's in the backfield all day, 1 target, but you still did great. So
yeah, it's great because we have Elijah Mitchell in this team now, and so when Elijah Mitchell's out, Deebo's the running back 1. Yeah. And when Mitchell's in, Deebo's the wide receiver 1. So either way you look at it, you have a very specific skill set that Deebo has, and I mean, arguably, I think he looks even better than Mitchell does running the ball. Like Deebo is just unreal. Like I think the talent and what he's able to do with the ball in space is just unprecedented, second to none, even on this team and across multiple teams. But luckily we had Mitchell. We were just able to plug and play Deebo.
Yes. So 2 quick things on that. One, Deebo Samuel and Cordarrelle Patterson give me hope for Laviska Shenault's future. Like maybe this is the future of NFL running backs / receivers. Like, let's get these guys who can do both. Because if running backs don't matter, you can throw an able-bodied guy back there. I mean, we've seen receivers here, Robert Woods. I mean, guys that have gotten random carries that have, oh, look, he just popped off for 6 yards. Like, how the heck did he do that? Well, the hole was the size of a truck. Like, anyone can run through that. So if we can get these hybrid type players, that would make fantasy way even more fun than it is now. And also, my question on this, I was very interested to see Elijah Mitchell on this team. So you went running back start, and then I'm assuming you blew most your load on Elijah Mitchell after week 1, and
921.
If that's the case, there you go, 921. So you didn't care that you already had two stud backs.
No. There's very few players that pop up every year that are league winning caliber of talent. For me, that's the thing that upsets me is we owned Elijah Mitchell probably in 70% of leagues leading into the year, and then dropped him like week 1 because we just thought so many things were going to have to go quote unquote right, but wrong for me as a Niner fan, because you're going to have to lose Mostert. You're going to have to, Wilson's already out. You're going to have Trey Sermon's going to have to fail. Like there was so many things that had to go and fall into place, and it just magically happened all within the first, couple games. And then boom, here we are, dropping him and then adding him back up the following week for like 70-80% of our budget. Because I always thought he fit the scheme better than Trey Sermon. He's that one cut runner, the get downhill, very fast and runner, where Trey Sermon was a little bit more stiff, a little bigger to me, didn't really fit the scheme as well for Shanahan's system. So I always believed Mitchell would, eventually have some sort of breakout with his team. I just never imagined it being this early in the season.
If only the 49ers would have drafted that, drafted accordingly in that way, and not said everything they said about Sermon in the summer, that would have been clearer. And also the Trey Lance questions, Billy, like when would he play? What would that mean to the rest of the players in that offense, including George Kittle? That remains a question, because here we are to Thanksgiving and he's only started once in an emergency. So, you try to, all these different things to look at to try to make your read. And one is what is the organizational plan? What does it appear to be? And what the 49ers are, and they're not bad, seems contrary to what, you'd expect most teams to do. Like, why am I drafting a first running back, then a second running back, and preferring the second one, especially if it's based on sort of running style. And then also, why am I trading up for the 3rd overall pick? I mean, if they thought Garoppolo could play, they owed him a lot of money. Anyway, it's been a sort of a confounding team all year.
Yeah, I am actually very happy that Lance is not in, because then you have to worry about goal line, goal line carries and stealing from Elijah Mitchell. Jimmy Garoppolo clearly favors Debo as well. The move up was questionable to me. I had thought the pick was going to be Mac Jones all off season. Seeing where he went in the draft even frustrated me even more, because of, he was, one of the most accurate quarterbacks in all of college. And then here he is, falls all the way to New England, and they just happened to snatch up their future franchise quarterback for free, essentially, when the Niners gave up the farm. That's a whole nother story. But I ultimately, to kind of touch on your point, I think that Kyle Shanahan has shown a consistent failure of identifying talent and to utilize that talent accordingly. Like, you look at what they did with Ayuk and kind of killed his confidence going into the first half of the year. They're doing the same thing. They did the same thing with Pettis. They did the same thing with Trey Sermon. Like, it's a narrative now, and it's continuing to happen. And I have a lot of questions with Kyle Shanahan that I'm not happy with, because of the draft picks that we've selected and the usage we've got out of them. But ultimately that's his position, his role, not mine.
Well, we looked at a first place high stakes team of yours. Let's look at Adam's, and he also drafted from the 12. Tell us about this one, Adam.
So I picked from the 12 spot also, and it went a completely different route, right? So I wanted to go running backs. I wanted to kind of do what Billy was able to do, but they all went, right. So I ended up going with Tyreek Hill and Diggs, who at the 12 spot, I had never seen them fall there as a combo in any of the drafts I did, like, all year. So to do a 3K and have that happen, I find super interesting. And I'm wondering if maybe the team at 11 was daring me to take them both, because maybe he thought that Tyreek or Diggs would fall back to him or her. So I ended up going 0 RB, and that was the kind of the one I posted on Gilds' thing there, just joking. I said, I'm never drafting a running back again because of this team. But it turned out perfectly the way I wanted it to. I got my 0 RB targets. One of them in Leonard Fournette. Darrell Henderson's worked out fine. Pollard had a little bit at the beginning for me. James White broke my heart, but yeah, I've been able to make a couple of moves, but Kupp, Diggs, Hill, and Andrews have just been so great for me, and it was just a completely different build. And if Hill and Diggs would have fallen to you there, Billy, would you guys have gone that route?
Looking at the board. Yeah, probably actually. Yeah. The only other player that probably would have been contemplated would have been Aaron Jones. But we both Tyreek and Diggs we're definitely high on our boards. So I'm gonna say 85% sure we probably would have gone that route 1-2.
I mean, Derrick Henry at 11. Like when did he ever fall? When did he ever fall that far?
That's what I was going to say. So maybe the team at 11, you have your tiers, and I don't know, like as you said, those receivers are often going by that spot, but this is a Derrick Henry opportunity. So, it was nice for you, I think, right, that you almost never picked the same position as the team next to you. So they come back in round 3 and they're going running back again, and you're sort of reinforcing each other by, taking such divergent strategies. It wasn't across the board, but you have that here in this draft. Andrews and what was Billy in round 3? Receive Cup? No, it was Evans.
Cup.
Evans.
Evans Cup,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Evans Cup. I have a team where I had Derrick Henry at 11. It just didn't happen often, but I faded him. But at that late in boards, you couldn't pass him up.
Right. They're sort of daring you to take him.
Yeah.
All right. Well, exactly. Before we let you go, Billy, like a big weekend in FFPC to say the least. Any sort of thoughts on how to play this week? Whether that's about the teams on bye or depth. Any sort of maybe strategy advice you could share?
Well, I think it's not just week 11. It's all year, right? And I think it's the teams who are constantly grinding the waiver wire, the teams that are constantly giving it their all and not checked out. They're utilizing both waiver runs. They're looking at their Wednesday run as well as Sunday morning runs. Those are the teams that consistently are at the top of the boards. I mean, you look at players like Dave Hubbard, and you look at players like, Chad Schroeder, and you look at players like Nelson Sousa, and everybody that you see the same names year after year after year in these rankings. And it's these guys hustle, and these guys are, just the cream of the cream. And it's because they never quit. They're 300 points out, and they're still grinding the waiver wires until that team is officially dead. And I think that's what separates the men from the boys inside the high stakes leagues, the people who get lazy and the people who say, oh, you know what? I missed Wednesday waiver run. I'll pick up somebody on Sunday. Mm-hmm. That's unacceptable when you're playing, for 5,000, 10,000, dollar leagues, or even if it's just an FBG or a main event or whatever it may be, you have to grind. You can't be out hustled, and you have to make sure that you're just pedal to the metal at all times. So yeah,
that's a great point.
Long-winded answer.
Sorry, well, no, it's true. And I think that's one of the great things about having a co-owner, right? Is these guys can kind of like feed off of each other and because I've got one and I've got a ton of teams. And the greatest, as disappointing as it is to have a team that's dead, today it was great to take a couple of football guys teams and just throw them in the trash. Like, all right, I don't have to grind waivers. These teams are done. These teams are, I put them at the very bottom. And when I get around to it, I will set the line up and maybe pick up a kicker if I need it. But like, I can focus my energy on, the teams that are still in it. So, because like you said, it can be a grind, but it's unacceptable to not continue to do that. And if you can't handle all those teams, then, drafting's fun. Maybe you should do best ball.
Yeah, exactly. And I, I did a lot of best ball, and they're completely different animals. Right. And I think though, in-season management is just critical to your success. And I had always thought that I was, a diehard in the waiver wires, but Dave is just another like beast. He's like another creature when it comes to waiver wires. Like the man lives on the waiver wire. Like I'm surprised you don't see his name on there. It's just like he's constantly on there. It's just hilarious. Like I'll go in and touch it a few times a week, couple hours each time, and then I come back in there and every time I check it, it's like there's a different name in there, or someone was removed, or somebody's in there, and we're constantly sending each other notes. So it's the grind, everybody. It's all about the grind.
If you want to send Dave a Christmas card, Dave Hubbard, the waiver wire, Santa Claus, the North Pole, the post office will get it to Santa Claus. It might be similar to that. I wish I could reach my 49er helmets over there. I could get up and get them, but Adam doesn't like when I do that. So next time I'll be prepared to show off my 49ers helmets.
Oh, I love hearing that, especially because you're Bills Mafia. So
I've got a Super Bowl MVP helmet collection.
Oh,
So
awesome.
I believe San Francisco has won a few. It looks like they're represented over there in that case. One of these weeks we should get it on display.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. Billy, thanks for your time. Great to see you. I look forward to seeing you next year. Happy Thanksgiving and good luck.
You boys as well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. At FF
See you,
Muzio
Billy.
for
Thanks,
Billy.
man.
See you, boys.
You see him a lot. Very active and interactive with other players. So let's skip ahead to the point you made about having a team that's out of it. Because in a certain scenario, right, you're talking about, hey, I've got so many teams and I can sort of ignore ones that really have no chance. I'll call it a problem for the sake of this question. Like, the problem is that team could be in a league where someone else needs you to, replace Patrick Mahomes or replace DeAndre Hopkins or somebody that's on bye this week or an injured player. The quarterback thing is really interesting, the way Mahomes and Murray, and I know Murray has been hurt anyway, so you've already had to address that, but that a lot of us don't roster backup quarterbacks until around now. So anyway, what do you say to the guy in the league you described where your team is in last or something, but they need you to win, try to get up to first place, and you're done with it?
Yeah, I mean, this should be the week to do it, right? You gotta reach out. But I mean, here's the thing. You have to be in a small enough amount of leagues, I think, to look at who you need the opponent to lose to and all that stuff. Like, I'm so involved in my teams that, like, probably the main events would be where I would go in and be like, all right, who's the guy that I need to lose? Who's he playing? All right, what's that guy's record? Is he going to set his lineup? And I would have no problem, like, trying to find this guy. Like, I can message him in the thing, find his email maybe through and just say, hey, listen, would you mind starting a lineup? Just to give this guy, just to give the guy an honest chance to lose. But generally speaking, FFPC it's very rare, except for maybe dynasty leagues or something, where you'll get a team that doesn't set a lineup. I know you get people post stuff to Twitter, and I saw one from Draft Addict today or yesterday where a guy didn't start a lineup. But it's also hard too when injuries and these COVID situations that happen Saturdays. Like, you already do your waivers and there's so many guys, you might not even have a guy that you want to drop, and now all of a sudden 2 guys pop up on COVID, 2 starters. Well, now what? I'm not going to drop them. So now maybe I do have to put a 0 in there, but there's all different types of scenarios. But as long as everyone's giving their honest effort, I think it's all we can ask for.
Right. I mean, that scenario you just described, that happens. I mean, Lamar Jackson was in lineups on Sunday because people were not expecting him to miss. And, oh, well, it's not because he didn't know about the news. It was past 10 in the morning and you couldn't pivot. But if you go into the week and I'm out of it and, whatever, I got other things to do. It's Thanksgiving. There's just it's an interesting one. And you're saying, well,
yes,
you think it's okay. And I'm not saying it's not, to reach out to that person and try to, encourage them to put the effort in. I respect that. Do you think that that's kind of the universal opinion on that? Because I think some people would say that it would be, I don't know, crossing some line to do that. You'd have no problem doing it, though.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. And all I would say is, and I think, just, hey, would you mind making an honest effort this week? I see you've got a lineup that isn't set, and it's, whatever. But I would not going to go in there and be like, hey, would you use some fab money and pick up this guys and block it? Like, I would never do that.
Right.
But like, hey, just set a lineup, just make an honest effort. And that's all you can ask, of these guys. Cause you don't know how many leagues they're in. You don't know what's going on in their life, because again, if they're 3-7 or 3-8 and they're toast, like, how much can you really ask of them if they don't want to do it, So,
well, I mean,
I think that's
what I'm bringing up. I mean, how much could you ask of them? Isn't that sort of the deal you make when you enter, like that you do have sort of that responsibility to the league? I think in a home league, a commissioner, and this doesn't have to be different for FFPC, but there's just so many different leagues. Like a commissioner might find it to be his or her job to do that. Like, I got to make sure for the integrity of it that everybody is still trying here, because that's important. Well, okay.
I mean, we should have Dave Gerzak on this. We should have Dave Gerzak on the show for this, because he has to do that for dynasty leagues, and he's got he's got to have his nose in it for all those dynasty leagues. And he's, I've seen him reset lineups and do all types of stuff, because there can't be any, whatever it's called, forfeiting games for better draft picks and stuff like that. So
tanking, right?
Yeah, tanking. Yeah. So that's super. That's more interesting there too.
We all got the email today from Dave and from FFPC.
That's right.
This is how we prevent that, or try to prevent that. It's just, and this is something I worry about too much in life already. But all right, you want to get somebody's attention to hope to be able to remind them or encourage them. Hey, look, we're all playing here. Now, if you send me, this is my first year playing in the main event. If you or someone I don't know sends me that email, my first reaction to it is the nerve of this guy. Like, I'm competing, I'm trying, I'm just losing. So I think it's right to sort of remind yourself to sort of calm down, because the person doesn't know you, and you don't really have to take that personally. I want to say, largely what you did, which it's okay to do that. It shouldn't not be. It shouldn't be a problem to want to send that email or want to, send that tweet to somebody, and hopefully they don't take it personally. If they do, they do. And it can backfire, right? Obviously, too, it can backfire, and the person might resent it and end up going the other way somehow for you. But that's sort of the pact you like to think you're making when you're playing for this much money and you're playing in this tournament is you want to think you're playing with people who take it seriously, and you want that to mean overall that they're going to take it right to the end, no matter their record. That's the bottom line for me.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying send it on a Tuesday. I'm saying if it's Saturday night and you're laying around setting lineups and you see that the guy still hasn't set his lineup, maybe on Saturday night, he's got two guys on a bye or something, like that, maybe you send out an email like, hey, just checking in to see if you wouldn't mind setting a lineup, whatever. Like,
yep.
That's all I'm saying.
Give it to Saturday night. Mahomes is interesting for this. Travis Kelce could be interesting for this. Two guys at onesie positions where you might not be carrying a backup. Give it to Saturday, maybe. Okay. Well, hopefully nobody gets run into a jam on that one. Let's go to the wire here, Adam. It's week 12, and just today, I feel like maybe 24 hours ago, we might have said, because I've been hearing this, it's kind of, not so great this week. No obvious names or anything, but just today there were developments that might have changed that, and that's the Titans and the Saints, to name two teams. The Saints have been out Kamara, and now Mark Ingram isn't practicing. That opens their backfield up for Thursday night, if there isn't a change to that tomorrow, but it's certainly possible that we're looking at Tony Jones here this week. And today the Titans cut Adrian Peterson. So that was kind of a curveball. Tennessee and Atlanta, both last week's, ended up going with running backs for the most part nobody was talking about, not even shows like this. Dontrell Hilliard for Tennessee, Kadri Ollison for Atlanta. Now Hilliard for the Titans to the main roster, Peterson out of the way. Are you interested?
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially now, and it's, there's a couple weeks left. A lot of these, we just talked about, like, are you still paying attention? Like, those teams aren't spending their fab money on Dontrell Hilliard. They don't care. So you're really competing with just a couple other teams. And if you have more waiver money, like I was just doing waivers today, and like you said, it's been such an interesting week where there's no one available. And then all of a sudden Adrian Peterson gets cut. It's like, all of a sudden Dontrell Hilliard, he was a guy I was already going to target anyways, because it's like, I've got money left sitting around, can always use more running backs. Like, why am I not going to put in a waiver claim on this guy? I mean, we clearly didn't, they brought him up and they gave him more touches than everybody else, and he looked okay. And why can't he be the guy? Like, it's not like it's not like there's other studs there, right? It's like, so yeah, it's annoying for the Adrian Peterson and the all the other running backs that the other people have been picking up and counting on. And But yeah, and also listen, don't listen to the people either. I see people on Twitter like, victory. And I'm all for a good victory lap, right? I'll do victory laps all day, but you can't. Oh, I told you not to pick up Adrian Peterson. Like, listen, pick up every running back. Like, the reason why you pick them all up is because you don't know, because the coaches don't know. And it's like, so pick up Dontrell Hilliard, pick up Tony Jones, and spend that money. You can't take the money with you, so you do still want to save some because you want 2 kickers. You probably want 2 defenses. You definitely want two quarterbacks going into the fantasy playoffs. But yeah, I'm spending a significant amount on Dontrell Hilliard this week.
I want to talk about kickers and defense real quick before we wrap up. So are you at 2 kickers and 2 defenses already? Does it depend on what your situation is, like what place you're in? Maybe it depends on more than that, just like who else is on your roster. But how are you looking at defense? Because I think I'm like maybe most players where it's week to week, and you also don't have the aspect where you do at other positions where they get frozen. So there's no element of that here all the way to the end. You have more experience than me. How do you play it?
Yeah, so the defenses and I think the kickers also don't get frozen like the other players. Right. So you're able to kind of add and drop them and stuff. So, but yeah, it depends. I've been riding with the Bills all year because they had such an easy schedule. They still kind of do have a fairly easy schedule, but they got New Orleans this week, which isn't good. But they got Carolina and Atlanta in the 3-week race there. But yeah, here's the hard part is when you don't have, like, on good teams, and if you don't have 2 defenses by now, it's kind of hard to find somebody to actually drop for a second defense. So that might be a situation where I just ride with 1 because especially if there is if they're not going to be on a bye, a defense obviously can't get hurt. So I might ride with 1 defense. I'm definitely riding with 2 kickers, and that's where you have to make some tough decisions. Usually I'll wait for the 2 kickers. I'll wait till the last cutoff week, which is, I think, heading into league championship week. And I'll drop someone that I don't think is going to start for me over the next 4 weeks. I'll pick up that second kicker. But I use for the strength of schedule stuff for defenses. I use the strength of schedule app here on draftsharks.com. It's really, really good. And that's can kind of point you ahead because you don't care about what the defenses are really done, not necessarily. It's about what they're going to do. And at the end of the day, the FFPC defenses don't score. Like the Bills going into last week were the number 1 scoring defense, and they averaged 11.11 points a game. Like, even if you have a defense get you they're just a defense isn't going to kill you. Now having New England, I picked up New England in a couple leagues this week, and they were
30.
They were 30, which is incredible. I mean, for them to triple up the average of the number 1 scoring player in that. I mean, who's the number 1 scoring running back? He's probably I don't know who it is. He's in the 20s. Taylor, what's he averaging? 20 something points a game. It's like having a running back score 60. He's tripling up the number 1 player at the position for their average. I mean, that's insane. So if you can get, it's all about touchdowns on defense. If you get a defense that can get a shutout and a touchdown, or even just a touchdown, that's what I'm looking for. I'm on defense are going to play other teams that are going to turn over the ball. So that's really what I'm looking for in a defense. And I know we're getting into the weeds here on defense, but hey, why not? You want teams. Yeah, that's right. You want teams where the defensive line can dominate the other team's offensive line, and you can find those metrics. You can Google it. I use establish the run as an O-line versus D-line thing for that. And every week they do the biggest mismatches, D-line versus O-line. So go look at that and maybe work a couple weeks down the road, because that's where turnovers come from. Quarterbacks making mistakes when they don't have time to throw the football. So if you're looking for turnovers and touchdowns from defense, that's what you're looking for. So try to find that. And that's why the Eagles defense has been so great. Their D line's been great. They've been forcing turnovers and scoring. So good for them.
Darius Slay in the last month alone would have more points than most
entire defenses. Right.
Entire defenses and a lot of running backs and receivers. I think he's got touchdowns in 3 of his last 4. So that's just the one player. Nice for him. All right, Adam. Happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend. It's always a pleasure connecting with you and talking fantasy. Very big week. Don't quit. The rest of us need you. Whether you need you, the rest of us need you.
No quit. No quit. Rough week, but listen, we still got our eye on the prize. We're right there. It's just, it's a 24-hour spell, and we're right back to it, and we're ready to roll. Big day on Thursday.
Big day on Thursday. You and I in Western New York. I'll work the Bill Saints game on Thanksgiving night, and then Sunday I'm going to try to get free, because week 12 of the regular season, to have the day, I mean, that is a day where you want to just watch everything, or not, and just not drive yourself crazy. But I don't think I have that sort of discipline. Just put me in front of every game and let me ride that ride. So we'll be back next week to discuss it. You can see our Twitter handles there if you want to interact with us and the show, Deep End FF1. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving again, and good luck.
See you guys.